Hello and welcome to the last of my little videos trying to help you get through the book of Leviticus in your grand project of reading all the way through the Bible. Today we're going to look at what might be my favourite chapter in Leviticus, chapter 25. And in chapter 25 we read about the Jubilee. It's just a little bit of context setting. You will remember from your very first day of your read through how Genesis 1 talks about how God made the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day rested. Now this becomes a pattern for the way that the people of God were to operate. You'll have read the Ten Commandments a few days ago, where the people are allowed to work for 7 days, but 6 days, but on the seventh day they have to rest. Now we're going to see that same pattern being played out in years. So the first thing you read in Leviticus 25 is about the Sabbath year, how for 6 years, you can work the soil, but from the seventh year, you are to rest the land and you only eat what the soil naturally produces. So that's one 7-year cycle, and it's supposed to remind us of creation. But if you take that 7 years and repeat that 7 times, then we've had 49. And then after that 7th cycle of 7 years, we get to the Jubilee year, which is just the best year of all. So what happens at the Jubilee year? Well, on the Day of Atonement, after the high priest has gone into the sanctuary and made atonement, like we read in chapter 16, then the shofarim, the trumpets are blown. And the trumpets are blown to declare that the Jubilee year has begun. What does that mean? Well, it means that the land gets another year of rest. So in that particular part of the cycle, it's already had its Sabbath year, now it gets another year of rest. But it means something even better. And this relates to the kind of social security system almost that they had in those days. So if you fell on hard times, after you've tried everything else and used up the reserves of money you may or may not have, you are permitted to sell your land, your ancestral land. You're not allowed to sell it just willy-nilly because you want to realise your assets and go travelling like the prodigal son did. But you are allowed to sell it if you fall on hard times. If you do, it comes back to you in the Jubilee year. So really you're not selling the land at all. In fact, it's not really yours to own. You are only ever, in the ancient mind, the Israelite who owned his land was really only a tenant because God owned the land. So what you're doing is you're selling the number of harvests. You do your maths, you say, oh, it's 27 years till the Jubilee. I'm selling you 27 harvests. And at the Jubilee, the land returns to you. What that means is you don't get rich people getting richer and richer and richer, expanding their territories more and more, and poor people getting poorer and poorer and poorer and losing territory more and more. Because on the 50th year, it's like a great big reset button is pressed and everything reverts to factory settings. And it's no coincidence that that relates to the creation theme, because it's like it goes back to the beginning. It goes back to how it was, if you see what I mean. The other thing that happened in the Jubilee year is that it also relates to something, a kind of social security system. So if you've sold your land and you still are struggling to feed your family, then you have an option, and that is to sell yourself into bonded labour. Now, the language you'll read is the language of slavery, but I don't want you to think of it like the transatlantic slave trade, which was an abomination from beginning to end. There's something about this system of bonded labour which is actually really valuable in that ancient society. So what you would do, having exhausted all other options, is you would sell yourself as a bonded labourer to a rich man, and you would work for him for nothing except that you would be provided for, your family would be provided for, and you'd be brought into the household and you'd belong to his extended family, if you like. But at the Jubilee year, that bond would be dissolved and you get to walk free. So again, you're not selling your entire body, you're just selling him the number of years of work that you agree, running up to the Jubilee. And once again, It reverts to factory settings in the Jubilee year. So if you haven't read it, or even if you have and you'd like to go back, just have another look at that chapter. There's so much richness in it. I'm not going to talk for much longer, except to say that Isaiah in chapter 61 envisages the coming future of God blessing the people in Jubilee terms. Read the beginning of Isaiah 61 and you'll see it. And then that is what Jesus quotes when he walks into the synagogue in Nazareth. In Luke 4, at the beginning of his ministry, he walks into the synagogue. He reads those words from Isaiah 61, and he says, today, these promises have been fulfilled. So there's something about the life and ministry of Jesus, which is gloriously fulfilling this pattern of Jubilee, which we read in Leviticus 25. That takes you, pretty much, this little chunk takes you to the end of Leviticus. Next is Numbers. Don't be put off by the title. There are some lists of numbers, and quite frankly, they're not terribly interesting, but there's some really interesting stuff in the book. And the Hebrew name for the book of Numbers is In the Wilderness. And that's a much better title, because what we're reading in the book of Numbers is God's people being provided for and quite frankly being quite disobedient in the wilderness wanderings prior to entering the land. So that's what you've got coming up next. May God bless you as you commit this time and this energy into reading his word, and may you encounter him on every single page.